This new political party promises to be the game changer that South Africa desperately needs. But will it live up to expectations? Let's unpack this. So at the recent BizNews conference, the popular political analyst Prince Mashele, who could actually be the most popular in South Africa, revealed some very ambitious plans for building a new political party, outlining a project that South Africa's really never seen before in the political landscape. Now, as interesting as his announcement was, and it certainly did seem quite exciting in many regards, there are certain aspects that have me questioning whether or not this is the kind of long-term project that will be sustainable and will bring about the change that Mashele and whoever else is supporting him may be looking for. But before we get into this, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? It's entirely free and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below the video. If you would like to support the channel and enjoy some additional perks, consider becoming a Power Club member. All you have to do is click on the join button below. Now let's get started. So before I share my thoughts on this new project, let's read a little bit more about what Prince Mashele is proposing. So, as explained here, Mashele unveiled a project to establish a new political party to dethrone the ANC in the 2029 general elections and rescue South Africa. Mashele is a prominent political scientist, analyst, and author known for his sharp and often provocative commentary on the country's governance and leadership. He has held various influential roles, including serving as a speechwriter in the South African presidency and for the Pan-African Parliament. He is the executive director of the Centre for Politics and Research and a former senior research fellow at the University of Pretoria. Mashele shared details about his new political project at the 2026 BizNews conference in Hermanus. So he explained here that the new project is a meritocratic, market-based alternative which combines what he calls the black politics of the ANC and the white politics of the DA. The groundwork for the project has already been done, however, it will only be launched after the 2026 local government elections. It will be led by highly educated professionals, including doctors, engineers, and teachers who have never held leadership positions in other political parties. Mashele said that the new party will have a competent black president and a competent white deputy president to inspire confidence across all demographics. A unique feature of the project is a council of wisdom comprising independent high achievers, over 60, from academia, the private sector, and NGOs. The council will serve as a sounding board and a public watchdog to ensure the leadership does not veer off the road. Unlike other political parties, it plans to announce its full cabinet before the election so voters and investors can see a government in waiting. Mashele said the plan will limit the cabinet to no more than 21 ministers and completely abolish the role of deputy ministers to end patronage networks. So, as explained here by Mashele, it's quite an ambitious plan that he has, and he's explaining how he wants this party to replace the ANC as the de facto party for black voters. Plans include printing 30 million t-shirts, distributing them across South Africa, and filling FNB Stadium in Soweto with party supporters. You fill the FNB Stadium, fly balloons in the sky, and get everyone excited. People will see this as a government in waiting, he said. He also wants to attract top professionals to serve as leaders in the party by paying them well for their services. This will cost a lot of money. To fund this project, the team has already registered an NGO called Rescue South Africa to attract donations. To avoid being controlled by any single interest, the project seeks funding from the general public and billionaires alike. Although the project-specific funding needs have not been announced, Mashele said it can be done with less than 2 billion rand. And I do have a bit of a concern around this number. So the project will be well publicized and easy for anyone to participate, either in person or financially, he said. The team plans to conduct a national roadshow to consult with citizens and identify the brightest local talent to catapult into national and provincial leadership. So if we scroll down here, we can see some of the policies he hopes to implement. So it explains how they're going to look to replace BEE with a redress program focused on quality education for Black children and the economic empowerment of all low-paid workers. And what I particularly liked about this is that Mashele explained in his speech that it's talking about workers of all races. So it's not about enriching certain racial groups, but rather people who genuinely need it regardless of their skin color. And then he also explained how the key priorities include securing borders, mercilessly deporting illegal foreigners, and a massive 6 to 12 month engineering push to rebuild public infrastructure. The project plans to scrap expropriation without compensation laws to attract investors and cut through red tape. And he himself explained the people who came up with the expropriation law have not implemented it. The only purpose it serves is to scare away investors. The project also aims to do away with NHI, National Health Insurance, and instead focus on improving public health care. Mashele said the project's success will ultimately depend on the educated elite leaving their comfort zones to enter politics and take responsibility for fixing the country. Now, if you are anything like me, your mind has already been whirling with all the new information that Mashele is giving us here. And I already have quite a few mixed emotions about this. Certain aspects I really like and others I find quite questionable. And so to really put my thoughts down, I decided to create a pros and cons chart. So here is my table of the pros and cons about Prince Mashele's new party. So the first pro that I have here is a gap in the market. And the reason I say this is actually quite clear. So going back to Action SA in 2021, a lot of the principles that Action SA and Herman Mashaba spoke about are similar to what Prince is speaking about here. And perhaps he even drew inspiration from them. After all, he was the biographer behind Herman Mashaba's book. Now, what's important to note about Action SA is that before their decline, back in 2021, they were able to do something that no other political party seemingly were able to do. They managed to earn a sizable chunk of the vote of both the ANC and the DA. And the reason for this is actually quite clear. You see, Action SA presented themselves as an alternative to the DA, but a more conservative DA. So the DA is a liberal party, centrist, sometimes leaning to the right, sometimes to the left, whereas Action SA back in 2021 really seemed like a solid conservative center-right party. They'd talk about a lot of things that not only appealed to minority voters who are traditional DA supporters, but also Black voters. For example, getting rid of illegal immigration was a very big pillar in their push. And that really appealed to a lot of Black voters because even though many of them vote for these sort of leftist parties, they're actually quite conservative in terms of their values that they exhibit in everyday life. And so what Prince seems to have done here is he's realized that there's this gap that's kind of reopened in the market, where if he can do things right and not make the mistakes of Herman Mashaba, his new party will actually succeed. So I think that there is that gap in the market. But now I want to talk about one of the cons, which is the Council of Wisdom. You see, I think it's very clever that he wants to get competent professionals involved in the party, because I think a lot of the complaints that people have when it comes to the political landscape is that these government ministers aren't people who are specialists in the field. A lot of people were talking about, for example, Angie Motshekga in the defense ministry. I mean, she has absolutely no knowledge of defense. She's never been in the military. What is she doing there? She also happened to be the former Minister of Education. So how do you make this jump from education to defense? It makes no sense. So I think to a very large extent, Prince Mashele's party has made a good move by saying we're going to target professionals. But I think that the downside is this Council of Wisdom. See, after all, apart from the fact that it's only taking on people who are over the age of 60, the Council of Wisdom seems to be creating a situation where you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You've got the situation where you're going to have this massive leadership council. And yes, I know that he says they're just the watchdog, but we've seen how these things go. When you have a massive council, and you have the normal party leadership like you have in other parties, you're going to be having people pulling in all different directions. There's going to be leadership struggles. I just think this is going to get very messy very quickly. The next part I want to discuss is that it really seems as if this new party is embracing the right kind of politics. I think that a lot of what Prince says is stuff that people really want. They don't want this NHI, but rather just fix the public healthcare infrastructure. Allow people to take on private healthcare if they want, but of course, fix the public infrastructure for those who can't afford it. That makes a lot of sense. Getting rid of illegal immigration, really important, and not enough parties are talking about this. We then also saw, for example, how he wants to reduce the size of cabinet, and this has got a lot of support from people from all walks of life. We all know that having around 72 cabinet members is a really bloated cabinet. It's a massive waste of taxpayer money, and we don't even know what these deputy ministers actually do. And the fact that he spoke about getting rid of the patronage network will certainly get support from a lot of people. But now I want to point out the problem with his approach, which is that even with all these good ideas, he's taken, again, what I like to call the black and white approach. There's going to be a black president and a white deputy, and we're going to combine the black politics and the white politics. My view is that this is such an outdated way of looking at South Africa. I understand some people are still obsessed with race, but we need to get rid of this. We need to get past this. It is outdated. It is counterproductive. And the more you focus on race rather than merit, the more the country just remains in the past. I think this is a terrible idea personally. I don't think you need to have a black leader and a white leader and black ministers and white ministers. Just get the person who's best for the job. Moving on to the next pro, I do like the idea of announcing a full cabinet before the election is held. See, what a lot of people might not realize is that not only do we not actually vote for our cabinet ministers, but we don't even vote for the president. We vote for a party. And then once the National Assembly is confirmed, they then vote for the president once they're all signed in. And so ultimately, I like this idea that you can basically see who you are actually voting for. You know, this will be the president of South Africa. This will be the person in charge of each ministry. That's a really cool idea. And I think it will get a lot of people excited because if they can see some really top professionals in there, they feel like, you know what? This party knows what it's talking about. Let me lend my vote to them this election and see how they do. The problem, however, is that I think that Prince is being really overly ambitious here. To say you're going to print out 30 million t-shirts and distribute them across South Africa sounds really good, and it sounds like it will create a lot of awareness, and that is a good thing, but I don't see how that necessarily translates to votes. We see this all the time, how you have all these people showing up and filling up stadiums for the ANC, EFF, MK, all these different parties, but ultimately those people filling out stadiums don't always translate to electoral success. Everybody was freaking out about how the EFF filled out FNB Stadium, yet at the actual 2024 election, they did pretty badly. They lost quite a lot of their voters, and they seem to be on a downward trajectory ever since. If you look at the opposite, the DA very seldom seems to have these massive rallies. They do sometimes, but it always seems to be sort of indoors in a sort of closed environment, not a massive stadium, sort of like when Helen Zille had her election launch as the mayoral candidate for Johannesburg. Yet, despite that, the DA generally does a very good job at getting voter turnout on the day of elections. So I just don't see how handing out t-shirts is necessarily going to translate to votes. And then I also sometimes wonder to myself, does filling out a stadium really work for the reasons that I've already mentioned? So while I like the idea of Prince saying we're going to be this massive party and we're going to show a massive show of force, and that could obviously galvanize a lot of voters, I don't know if that's necessarily going to work because of the reasons I've already explained. The next thing that I really liked about Prince's party is this idea of having a national roadshow. And again, this seems to be something that is taken from Herman Mashele. So back in the day, as I mentioned in brackets here, it's like the People's Dialogue that Herman Mashele held before establishing Action SA. Whether or not this is an original idea doesn't really matter. We're putting that to the side. The main thing is that I think that this is an approach that works. Actually listen to the people on the ground. Make them feel like they matter. Make them feel that they're important and that their voice matters too. And I think by doing that, you can not only actually gauge their emotions and develop a relationship with the people and get their buy-in, but also ensure that you actually formulate policies that people actually want. I think this is a great idea. Still, on the cons section, we see how Prince's funding needs seem questionable. He insisted that you don't need more than 2 billion rand in order to get this project done. But again, I don't see how that adds up. You want over 30 million t-shirts printed. Who knows what that's going to cost, not only to print, but also to distribute. And then, of course, you want to fill out stadiums like FNB Stadium, which is one of the biggest in the country. And after all, we also need to know how much everything else is going to cost. When it comes to election day, how much money is going to go into printing out banners and t-shirts and all different things? We don't really know the exact figures yet. Plus, we also need to account for the fact that there's inflation, right? The cost of these things goes up every single year. And so I think it's a very peculiar thing for him to come out now and say it's not going to cost more than 2 billion rand, because he has no way of knowing this. And with all due respect to Prince, he's never run a political party. So how does he know? I don't know either, because I've also never run one. I just think that he's jumping the gun, and that by saying something like that, he's already causing a little bit of concern, because you start to wonder, well, if he's jumping to conclusions about the funding, how does he really know what's going to happen electorally? It all sounds a little bit suspect. So overall, I am quite conflicted about his party. I'm not entirely sure if this project is going to work, but at the same time, I'm happy to be a spectator. Let's see if it can maybe make a difference, because a difference is what we need. But let me know in the comment section below what you think of his party. Do you think that this is a good idea? Or do you think that maybe we should just allow the existing parties to continue hashing it out as usual, and maybe there just are too many parties as is? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks very much for tuning into the video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.